Commander Jake Harrison stood in the gleaming reception hall of the Zephyrian diplomatic vessel, trying not to fidget with his dress uniform. The crystalline walls pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns that made his head swim if he stared too long. Around him, Earth's finest diplomats mingled awkwardly with their alien counterparts, everyone pretending they knew what they were doing. This was humanity's first official contact with the Zephyrian Empire, and Jake had been chosen to represent Earth's military forces. Not because he was the best diplomat, he definitely wasn't, but because he'd been the one to accidentally stumble upon their scout ship while on a routine patrol near Neptune. The Zephyrians were humanoid enough to not be completely terrifying, though their skin had an opalescent quality that shifted colors like oil on water. They stood about 7 feet tall on average, with elongated limbs and faces that were beautiful in an otherworldly way. Their eyes were larger than humans, with vertical pupils that dilated and contracted independently. Jake spotted Ambassador Chen across the room, desperately trying to communicate with what appeared to be a Zephyrian official. The universal translator devices they'd been given were working, mostly, but cultural context was proving to be a massive hurdle. "Commander Harrison," a melodious voice said behind him. Jake turned and nearly dropped his ceremonial sword. Standing before him was the most striking being he'd ever seen. Even among the already impressive Zephyrians, she stood out. Her skin shimmered with deeper hues of purple and gold, and she wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of condensed starlight. A circlet of what looked like frozen aurora borealis rested on her head. "I am Princess Lyrelai of the Third Spiral," she said, inclining her head slightly. "I understand you are the one who discovered our vessel." Jake's military training kicked in, and he straightened his posture. "Yes, Your Highness. Though discovered might be too strong a word. More like nearly crashed into." To his surprise, she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Your honesty is refreshing. My people value truth, even when it is unflattering." "Well, then you'll love Earth politicians," Jake muttered before he could stop himself. Her eyes, both of them, focused on him with interest. "You speak with humor in formal situations. This is unusual for a military representative." Jake felt heat rise to his cheeks. "Sorry, I'm not really cut out for this diplomatic stuff. They just sent me because I was there when we made contact." "Perhaps that is why I find you intriguing," Lyrelai said. "The others speak in circles, saying nothing with many words. You say much with few." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the diplomatic dance around them. Jake noticed that Lyrelai kept touching a pendant at her throat. A nervous gesture, perhaps. It was oddly comforting to think that even alien royalty might feel awkward at these events. "Your Highness," Jake ventured, "can I ask you something?" "You may." "Why did your people come to our solar system? I mean, the galaxy's huge. What are the odds you'd just stumble upon us?" Lyrelai's skin shifted to a deeper purple. "We did not stumble, Commander. We have been searching." "Searching for what?" "For those who bear the mark of the ancients." She studied him intently. "Tell me, do your people have legends of visitors from the stars? Beings who came long ago and left signs of their passing?" Jake thought about it. "Well, yeah. Every culture has stories like that. Gods from the heavens, ancient astronauts, that sort of thing. Most people think it's just mythology." "Most people are wrong," Lyrelai said simply. "The ancients were real. They seeded many worlds with life, and they left markers, genetic and cultural, in the species they touched. We Zephyrians are searching for our siblings among the stars." "And you think humans are related to you somehow?" "We are certain of it." She moved closer, and Jake caught a scent like ozone and honey. "Your DNA shares base sequences with ours that could not have evolved independently. We are cousins, Commander Harrison, separated by eons and light years. Jake's mind reeled. This was way above his pay grade. That's huge. Do our scientists know about this? They will, once formal relations are established. But first, we must complete the ritual of first meeting. Lyrelei touched her pendant again. It is an ancient custom, one that binds our peoples in fellowship. Okay, what do I need to do? I should probably get Ambassador Chen. No, Lyrelei interrupted. The ritual must be performed by those who first made contact. You and the pilot of our scout vessel, she is here somewhere. She scanned the room, then made a subtle gesture. A younger Zephyrian approached, her skin a lighter shade of blue-green. She looked nervous, constantly adjusting her robes. This is Scout Captain Thera, Lyrelei introduced. Thera, this is Commander Harrison, the human who discovered you. Thera's eyes widened. Your Highness, I am honored. She turned to Jake. And I apologize for nearly causing a collision. I was distracted by your planet's unusual magnetic field. No harm done, Jake said, extending his hand automatically. Thera looked at the offered hand in confusion. Lyrelei laughed again. He offers a greeting, Thera. Humans touch hands to show peaceful intent. Quite logical, actually. It proves neither party is holding a weapon. Tentatively, Thera took Jake's hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone. Now, Lyrelei said, we must perform the ritual of first meeting. Commander, you must present a gift to Thera, something that represents your people. Then speak the ancient words. Jake patted his pockets frantically. He hadn't brought anything gift-like. His hand touched the challenge coin in his breast pocket, a memento from his first command. It wasn't much, but it had the Earth Defense Force emblem on one side and an image of Earth on the other. He pulled it out. This is a challenge coin. We give them to commemorate service and achievement. This one was given to me when I took command of my first ship. He offered it to Thera, who took it reverently. I accept this gift in the spirit it was given, she said formally. Now the words, Lyrelei prompted. Repeat after me. By star and void, by fire and cold, I bind my fate to yours, from now until the ends of all things. Jake repeated the words, feeling slightly ridiculous but not wanting to offend. Thera responded with her own phrase in the Zephyrian language, which the translator converted to, By the light of home and the dark between, I accept this binding until the stars grow cold. The pendant at Lyrelei's throat suddenly flared with brilliant light. Similar lights erupted from jewelry worn by Zephyrians throughout the hall. A collective gasp went up from the alien delegation. What's happening? Jake asked, alarmed. Lyrelei's expression had changed completely. Her skin rippled through a rapid sequence of colors Jake hadn't seen before. Commander Harrison, what is your full name? Jacob Andreas Harrison. Why? She turned to Thera, speaking rapidly in their language. The translator struggled to keep up. Ancient bloodline, the markers are clear. Andreas line, thought lost. Your Highness, Jake said, now genuinely worried. What's wrong? Lyrelei faced him again, and he was shocked to see what looked like tears in her eyes. If Zephyrians cried crystal droplets, that is. Commander Harrison, Jacob of the Andreas line, you have just invoked the rite of celestial binding with a member of the royal household. She gestured to Thera, who looked like she might faint. Scout Captain Thera is my cousin, 7th in line to the spiral throne. What? But you said this was just a first contact ritual. It is. Was. Should have been. Lyrelei's colors were cycling rapidly now, apparently the Zephyrian equivalent of being flustered. But you carry the genetic markers of the Andreas line, one of the ancient houses. When you spoke the binding words to royal blood while bearing an Andreas marker, she paused, seeming to gather herself. You have proposed marriage, Commander, and by accepting your gift and responding, Thera has accepted. The room had gone completely silent. Every eye, human and Zephyrian, was fixed on them. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. I proposed? But I didn't mean... I was just following instructions. The right does not care for intentions, Liralai said softly. It reads genetic markers and responds to ancient protocols. The Andreas line was thought extinct. They were the bridge builders, the ones who could bind different species together. Your ancestor must have been one of the ancients who chose to remain on Earth. Jake looked at Thera, who was staring at him with those huge, impossible eyes. Can't we just undo it? The rite of celestial binding has not been invoked in over 3,000 years, Liralai said. It cannot be undone. To attempt it would be... She searched for words. It would be like trying to ungrow a tree or unburn a star. The quantum entanglement is already complete. Quantum entanglement? Jake's voice cracked. Ambassador Chen had finally noticed the commotion and was making his way over, looking concerned. Other human diplomats were following. What's happening here? Chen demanded. Commander Harrison, why are all the aliens staring at you? Before Jake could answer, Liralai stepped forward. Ambassador Chen, I must inform you that your representative has just entered into a binding agreement with the Zephyrian Empire. By the laws of our people, Commander Jacob Harrison and Scout Captain Thera are now betrothed. This union will serve as the foundation for the alliance between our species. Chen's face went through several expressions before settling on stunned disbelief. He what? It's not my fault, Jake protested. She told me it was just a ritual. Exchange gifts, say some words, establish first contact. It was supposed to be. Thera spoke for the first time since the light show. Her voice was quiet but steady. But the commander carries the mark of the ancients. The old protocols activated. I felt it when we touched hands, but I thought it was just... Her skin flushed a deeper green. Just what? Jake asked. Just attraction, she admitted. Your species and ours are more compatible than we expected. But now I understand it was recognition. The mark calling to the blood. This is insane, Jake said. I'm a spaceship commander, not some ancient alien hybrid. Liralai pulled out a device that looked like a crystalline tablet. She held it up to Jake, and it projected a holographic display of what appeared to be DNA sequences. See for yourself. The markers are undeniable. Somewhere in your ancestry, Commander, is one of the ancients who chose to remain on Earth when the others departed. The hologram meant nothing to Jake, but he could see the excited reactions from both human and Zephyrian scientists in the crowd. Dr. Petrov, Earth's lead xenobiologist, practically shoved people aside to get a better look. Extraordinary, Petrov breathed. The genetic sequences, they're like nothing we've ever cataloged, but they're definitely there. How did we miss this? Because you weren't looking for it, Liralai said. The marks are dormant until activated by proximity to certain Zephyrian biotechnology, like our pendants. She touched the crystal at her throat. They're designed to identify ancient bloodlines. Jake slumped against a nearby pillar. This morning he'd been a simple military commander, tasked with standing around looking impressive at a diplomatic function. Now he was apparently part alien and engaged to marry an alien princess. No, scout captain who was also a princess. His head was spinning. Commander, Thera said softly, approaching him. I understand this is overwhelming. It is for me as well. I never expected... When I joined the Scout Service, I did it to avoid royal obligations, not to stumble into the most significant binding in our history. You wanted to avoid royal stuff too? Jake asked, finding an odd kinship in their mutual reluctance. She smiled. At least he thought it was a smile. Her mouth curved upward and her eyes brightened. I wanted to explore, to see new worlds without ceremony and protocol. And now... She gestured helplessly at the crowd around them. Ambassador Chen was in heated discussion with Lyrelai and what appeared to be the Zephyrian ambassador. Jake caught phrases like unprecedented situation and needs approval from Earth's governments, and ancient law supersedes modern concerns. Hey, Jake said to Thera, want to get some air or whatever you breathe? I breathe oxygen, just like you, she said with what might have been amusement. And yes, I would very much like to leave this room. They started moving toward an exit, but Lyrelai intercepted them. You cannot simply leave. There are protocols to observe, ceremonies to plan. Your Highness, Thera said with surprising firmness, the rite is complete. By ancient law, the bonded pair must spend time in isolation to understand their connection. Surely you remember the texts. Lyrelai's colors shifted in what Jake was beginning to recognize as frustration. That tradition is from a different era. But still valid, Thera insisted, unless you wish to challenge the ancient laws? The princess backed down, though she didn't look happy about it. 1 hour. Then we must discuss the implications of this development. Jake and Thera escaped to an observation deck that looked out over Earth. The blue marble hung in the void, serene and oblivious to the chaos happening above it. So, Jake said after a moment of silence, we're engaged. It appears so. And I'm part alien. Also apparent. And this is going to change everything between our species. Thera turned to look at him. Does that frighten you? Jake considered the question. Honestly? Yeah, it does. This morning I knew who I was, what my life was going to be. Now, he gestured helplessly. Now you are the bridge between worlds, Thera said. The Andreas line were the builders of connections. It's why the Rite responded so strongly to you. Your ancestors were the ones who made first contact possible between species. They carried the gift of understanding. I don't feel very understanding right now, Jake admitted. I feel like I got drunk at a Vegas chapel and woke up married to someone I just met. No offense. What is a Vegas chapel? Despite everything, Jake laughed. Ask me again in a year and I'll show you. Thera's skin shifted to a warm, golden color. You speak as if you've accepted this. I don't know if I have, Jake said honestly, but I'm a military man. When life throws you a curveball, when unexpected things happen, you adapt, you survive, you find a way forward. The binding doesn't compel feelings, Thera said quietly. It creates a connection, but what we do with it, that's up to us. I won't force you to care for me. Jake looked at her, really looked at her. Yes, she was alien, with her color-shifting skin and 2 large eyes. But there was something earnest in her expression, a vulnerability that transcended species. Tell you what, he said. Let's take this one day at a time. We'll figure out the political stuff. God knows the diplomats will have a field day with this. But between us, let's just see what happens. Fair? Fair, she agreed. Then, hesitantly, may I ask you something? Shoot. When we touched hands, did you feel anything before the rite activated? Jake remembered the moment, the cool touch of her skin, the little jolt that had run up his arm. He'd attributed it to nerves, but now... Yeah, he admitted. I felt something, you? Her skin flushed that deeper green again. Yes. I thought it was just curiosity about your species. But perhaps the Rite knew something we didn't, Jake finished. They stood together watching Earth turn, 2 unlikely partners bound by ancient law and cosmic chance. Jake didn't know what the future held, for him, for Thera, for their species. But as he stood there with her, he found he wasn't as terrified as he probably should be. His communicator buzzed. Ambassador Chen's voice came through, stressed but controlled. "Commander, I need you and the, princess back in the reception hall. The president wants to speak with you. Also, the media somehow got wind of this and... well, you're about to become very famous." Jake sighed. "Copy that, Ambassador. We're on our way." He turned to Thera. "Ready to face the music?" "I don't understand that expression." "It means, ready to deal with the consequences of our actions?" She straightened her robes and lifted her chin, a gesture that was pure royalty, regardless of species. "I am Scout Captain Thera of the Third Spiral, 7th in line to the throne. I have flown through nebulas and charted unknown systems. I think I can handle some human politicians." Jake grinned. "You know what? I think this might actually work out." As they walked back toward the reception hall and whatever chaos awaited them, Jake's mind raced with the implications. He was part alien. He was engaged to alien royalty. Humanity's first contact had just become a lot more personal than anyone had anticipated. But underneath the panic and confusion, there was something else. A tiny spark of excitement, of possibility. The universe had just become a much bigger, stranger place, and he was right at the center of it. The doors to the reception hall opened, revealing a crowd of humans and Zephyrians all talking at once. Cameras flashed. Apparently the media had indeed arrived. Ambassador Chen looked like he'd aged 5 years in the last hour. "Here we go," Jake muttered. Thera surprised him by taking his hand. "Together?" He squeezed back gently. "Together." And with that, Commander Jacob Harrison, part human, part ancient, accidental groom, walked into his new life. 3 weeks after the accidental proposal heard across the galaxy, Jake Harrison sat in his temporary quarters aboard the Zephyrian diplomatic vessel, staring at a holographic display of Earth's news feeds. Every single one featured his face alongside headlines like "Earth's First Alien Fiancé" and "Commander Harrison, Humanity's Unlikely Ambassador of Love." He groaned and shut off the display. The media circus had been relentless. Every detail of his life had been scrutinized, from his childhood in Ohio to his military service record. They'd even interviewed his ex-girlfriend from college, who had plenty to say about his commitment issues. A soft chime announced someone at his door. "Come in," he called, expecting his assigned cultural liaison. Instead, Thera entered, carrying a tray with 2 steaming cups. "I brought kaffa," she said. "It's similar to your coffee, but with a mild euphoric effect. I thought you might need it." "Euphoria sounds good right about now," Jake said, accepting the cup gratefully. The liquid was purple and smelled like cinnamon mixed with ozone. The first sip sent a pleasant warmth through his chest. "How are you handling the attention?" Thera asked, settling into the chair across from him. Her skin was a muted blue today. Jake had learned that Zephyrians had some conscious control over their coloring, and blue generally indicated calm or contemplation. "About as well as a fish handles being on land," Jake admitted. "I signed up to fly spaceships, not to be a celebrity. How about you?" "My people are used to royal attention, but this is different. The discovery of a living Andreas descendant has caused quite a stir. Religious sects that haven't been active for centuries are suddenly holding rallies. Some call our binding a sign of the ancients' return." Jake winced. "Sorry about that. If I'd known my DNA would cause this much trouble..." "You'd have still touched my hand," Thera finished with what he'd learned was her version of a smile. "The rite would have activated regardless. At least this way it happened during a formal ceremony rather than, say, during a battle or medical emergency." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Despite the bizarre circumstances, Jake had found Thera surprisingly easy to be around. She had a dry sense of humor that reminded him of his military colleagues, and she shared his discomfort with excessive ceremony. "So," Jake said, "apparently there's some kind of compatibility test we need to take?" Thera's skin shifted to a deeper purple. Embarrassment, he'd learned. Ah, yes, the biological compatibility assessment. It's comprehensive. How comprehensive are we talking? They'll scan our genetic structures, neural patterns, pheromone responses, and... She paused. Reproductive compatibility. Jake nearly choked on his kaffa. Reproductive? But we're different species. That's what makes it interesting, Thera said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her embarrassment. Preliminary scans suggest our species are more closely related than anyone thought. The ancients' genetic engineering was remarkably thorough. Some of our scientists think successful hybrid offspring might actually be possible. Kids, Jake said faintly. They're talking about us having kids. Eventually, the binding doesn't require immediate consummation. Her skin was now a deep violet. Though traditionally, bonded pairs are expected to at least attempt physical intimacy within the first year. Jake set down his cup before he dropped it. Thera, we need to talk about this. Really talk. Not as representatives of our species or accidental participants in an ancient ritual, but as two people caught up in something neither of us asked for. She nodded, her colors settling back to blue. You're right. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with what this binding actually means for your people. Thera took a breath. The rite of celestial binding was created by the ancients as a way to join different bloodlines, and sometimes different species, in unbreakable partnership. It's not just marriage as your people understand it. It's a quantum entanglement of life forces. Which means, we're connected now, at a fundamental level. I can sense your presence when you're near, feel echoes of your stronger emotions. As the bond deepens, we'll be able to communicate without words, share memories, even transfer knowledge directly. Some bonded pairs report sharing dreams. Jake stared at her. You can feel my emotions, right now? Only impressions. You're anxious but trying to hide it. Curious despite yourself. And... She tilted her head. Hungry? When did you last eat? I skipped breakfast. Too many reporters outside the cafeteria. He shook his head in amazement. This is real. This is actually happening. I'm afraid so. Jake. She used his first name rarely, and it always caught his attention. I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you beyond what you're willing to give. Yes, our peoples will pressure us. Yes, there are traditions and expectations. But between us, we set our own pace. Even if that pace is glacial. Even if it's stationary, she assured him. Though I should mention that complete rejection of the bond can have consequences. What kind of consequences? Nothing fatal, she said quickly. But bonded pairs who try to completely sever their connection often experience what you might call phantom pain, a constant sense of something missing. It's why the rite hasn't been used in millennia. It's not something entered into lightly. Except we did enter it lightly. Hell, we stumbled into it blind. Which is why I think we might have an advantage, Thera said. We have no preconceptions, no centuries of tradition weighing us down. We can define what this means for ourselves. Before Jake could respond, his communicator buzzed urgently. Ambassador Chen's voice came through, tense and formal. Commander Harrison, Scout Captain Thera, please report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. We have a situation. They found the conference room in chaos. Human and Zephyrian diplomats were clustered around a holographic display showing what appeared to be a massive spaceship. No, Jake realized, an entire fleet. What's going on? Jake asked. Chen turned to them, his face grim. We've just received a message from the Korvax hegemony. They're claiming that the rite of celestial binding between you two is invalid and an insult to their sovereignty. The Korvax? Thera's skin went pale. But they have no claim to the rite. They rejected the ancients' teachings millennia ago. Lyra Lee stepped forward. Her own colors cycling through what Jake had learned indicated severe stress. The Korvax are claiming that Commander Harrison's Andreas lineage belongs to them. They say his ancestors were stolen from them by the ancients, and they want him returned. Returned? Jake said. I'm not a lost library book. To the Korvax, that's exactly what you are, Lyra Lee said grimly. A piece of stolen property. They're giving us 72 hours to hand you over, or they'll consider it an act of war. Against Earth? Chen asked. Against both Earth and the Zephyrian Empire, Lyra Lee confirmed. They view our binding ritual as theft of their rightful property. Jake felt Thera's hand slip into his. When had that become a natural gesture? They can't have him, she said firmly. The binding is complete and recognized by ancient law. The Korvax have no standing. They have a fleet, one of the human admirals pointed out. Preliminary scans show at least 40 capital ships. And Earth has, what, 12 combat-ready vessels? Jake said. Not exactly even odds. The Zephyrian Empire will stand with Earth, Lyra Lee declared. An attack on Commander Harrison is an attack on our royal family now. But we must find a diplomatic solution. War would be catastrophic for all involved. What do we know about these Korvax? Jake asked. I mean, beyond them wanting to collect me like a Pokemon card? Dr. Petrov pulled up a new display. They're a militant species that believes in genetic purity and ownership. They catalog and claim bloodlines like other species claim territory. If they genuinely believe Commander Harrison carries genes they consider theirs, they won't stop, Thera finished. The Korvax are relentless when it comes to their genetic holdings. They've fought wars over single individuals before. Great, Jake muttered. So I've gone from accidental fiancé to intergalactic MacGuffin. There might be a way, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see an elderly Zephyrian Jake hadn't met before. His skin was deep silver, indicating extreme age. Elder Cosrin, Lyra Lee said respectfully, I didn't know you were aboard. I came as soon as I heard about the Andreas binding, Cosrin said. I am old enough to remember the last time the Korvax tried to claim an Andreas descendant. There is precedent for resolving this without war. I'm listening, Jake said. The trial of inheritance, Cosrin said. An ancient protocol where disputed lineages are tested. The claimant must prove their worthiness through 3 challenges. If they succeed, their claim is recognized as legitimate. If they fail, the Korvax get me? Jake guessed. No. If you fail, the binding is dissolved and you're free to choose your own path. But the challenges are significant. The last person to attempt them died in the second trial. Wonderful, Jake said dryly. So my options are start an interstellar war, become property of the Korvax, or probably die in some ancient alien trial. Any other cheerful possibilities? You could succeed, Thera said quietly. The Andreas line was bred for these trials. It's in your blood. My blood that I didn't even know about until 3 weeks ago. Commander, Ambassador Chen said carefully, I can't order you to do this. Earth's government is still debating the legal implications of your situation. But if there's a chance to avoid war... Jake looked around the room at the mix of human and Zephyrian faces, all watching him with varying degrees of hope and desperation. He thought about Earth, still taking its first tentative steps into the galactic community. A war now could destroy everything. When would these trials take place? He asked. The Korvax would have to agree first, Cosrin said, but traditionally within 7 days of the challenge being issued. And I'd have help? Training? I would serve as your second, Thera said immediately. It's my right as your bonded partner. The Empire would provide our best trainers, Lyra Lee added, and access to all historical records about the trials. Jake ran his hands through his hair. 3 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been navigation calculations for patrol routes. Now he was contemplating risking his life in alien trials to prevent an interstellar war. All right, he said finally. Send the challenge. But I want every scrap of information about these trials. If I'm going to risk my neck, I'm going in prepared. The room erupted in motion as diplomats rushed to draft messages and military officials began strategic planning. Jake found himself swept along to a smaller conference room where Khosrin began explaining the trials. The first is the trial of mind, the elder said, his silver skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. You'll be placed in a neural interface that will test your ability to process and adapt to alien thought patterns. Many humans would find it overwhelming, but the Andreas line was designed for mental flexibility. Designed, Jake repeated. Everyone keeps saying that. What exactly did the ancients do to my ancestors? They created bridges, Khosrin explained. The Andreas line carries genetic modifications that allow for enhanced neural plasticity, improved pattern recognition, and most importantly, the ability to form quantum neural links with other species. It's why the binding with Thera was so strong. Your minds are naturally compatible. The second trial, Jake prompted. The trial of body. Combat, but not as you understand it. You'll fight in environments that shift between the physical constants of different worlds. Gravity, atmosphere, even the flow of time can change. It tests your ability to adapt physically as well as mentally. And the third? Khosrin's patterns dimmed. The trial of spirit. I cannot tell you more. It's different for each person. It tests the very core of who you are. No pressure, Jake said weakly. Over the next 2 days, Jake trained intensively with both human and Zephyrian instructors. He learned to meditate using Zephyrian techniques that supposedly prepared the mind for neural interface. He sparred in chambers where the gravity could be adjusted from Earth normal to 3 times that weight. He studied ancient texts about the Andreas line until his eyes burned. Through it all, Thera was there. She pushed him when he wanted to quit, supported him when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, and shared what knowledge she could about facing the unknown. You're afraid, she said during a break in training, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Terrified, Jake admitted, not of dying exactly, but of failing, of letting everyone down. Your people, my people, you. You won't fail, she said with such certainty that he almost believed it. I've watched you these past days. You have something many don't. The ability to adapt without losing yourself. That's what the trials really test. How do you know so much about them? Her skin shifted to a pattern he hadn't seen before, complex swirls of gold and silver. Because my grandmother attempted them once long ago. She survived barely and told me stories. She said the hardest part wasn't the challenges themselves, but maintaining your sense of identity when everything around you is chaos. Your grandmother sounds like a tough lady. She was. She would have liked you. Thera squeezed his arm. Jake, whatever happens in the trials, I want you to know something. These past weeks, despite the chaos and the pressure and the strangeness of it all, I don't regret our binding. You're a good man and I'm proud to be connected to you. Jake felt warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with alien beverages. Thera, An alarm cut through the ship. All senior staff to the bridge, the announcement system blared. Korvax response incoming. They rushed to the bridge, where a massive hologram dominated the center of the room. A being that looked like a cross between a mantis and a crystalline structure gazed down at them with multifaceted eyes. I am Hierarchy Prime Zalos of the Korvax hegemony, it said, its voice like grinding glass. We have received your challenge. It amuses us that the Stolen One thinks himself worthy of trials. We accept, on one condition. Name it, Lorelei said. If he fails any trial, he comes with us immediately. No delays, no further negotiations. And the female who claimed him must be surrendered as well, as punishment for theft. Jake felt Thera stiffen beside him. That wasn't part of the original terms. The terms are what we make them. Zalos cut her off. Accept or face our fleet. Jake stepped forward before anyone could stop him. I accept, on one condition of my own. The crystalline eyes focused on him. You dare make demands. I dare. If I succeed in all 3 trials, the Korvax renounce all claims to any Andreas descendants forever. Not just me, but any children I might have, or any other Andreas line members you find. Complete and total renunciation. The bridge was silent except for the hum of electronics. Zalos tilted its head, an oddly insectoid gesture. You have courage, Stolen One. Very well. If you succeed, the Andreas line is free of our claim forever. When you fail, you and the thief will serve the hegemony. When I succeed, Jake corrected, you'll have to find someone else to obsess over. Something that might have been laughter came from the alien. 3 days, Stolen One. The trials begin at the nexus point. Do not be late. The hologram winked out, leaving them in tense silence. That was either very brave or very stupid, Chen said finally. Probably both, Jake admitted. He turned to Thera. I'm sorry. I just made things worse for you. No, she said firmly. You made things clearer. Now we both have something to fight for. The next 3 days passed in a blur of final preparations. Earth's media went into overdrive when news of the trials leaked. Jake found himself the subject of everything from serious political analysis to memes comparing him to various mythological heroes. His favorite was one that showed him labeled as some guy from Ohio facing off against a massive alien armada with the caption, "Humans will pack bond with anything, including ancient alien rituals." On the final night before leaving for the Nexus Point, Jake found himself unable to sleep. He wandered to the observation deck, not surprised to find Thera already there. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. The bond makes it difficult when you're distressed, she admitted. I can feel your anxiety from 3 decks away. Sorry about that. Don't be. It's not unpleasant, just intense. She moved closer to him. Jake, I need to tell you something before tomorrow. If this is a in case you die speech, I'd rather not. It's not, she interrupted. It's an in case you live speech. When you succeed tomorrow, and you will succeed, things will change between us. The trials don't just test worthiness, they strengthen the bond. We'll be more connected than ever. I need to know you're prepared for that. Jake looked at her, really looked at her. Somewhere in the past weeks, she'd stopped being the alien he'd accidentally proposed to and become just Thera. Her color-shifting skin was beautiful rather than strange. Her 2 large eyes showed depths of emotion he was only beginning to understand. Her presence at his side felt right in a way he couldn't fully explain. I think I am, he said slowly. It's funny. A month ago, the idea of being quantum entangled with anyone would have sent me running. But now, I can't imagine facing tomorrow without knowing you're connected to me. Her skin shimmered through a pattern of colors he'd never seen before, gold and silver and deep purple swirling together like a sunset. The humans have a word, she said softly. Love. We have something similar, but it translates more as the joy of finding your other self. I think I'm beginning to understand what that means. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Thera. She pressed a finger to his lips, a gesture she'd learned from human media. After. Say whatever you need to say after you've beaten the trials. Give us both something to look forward to. He caught her hand and held it. Deal. But I'm holding you to that. They stayed on the observation deck until Earth's sun began to peek around the planet's edge, 2 unlikely partners preparing to face the impossible together. As Jake suited up the next morning in the specialized armor the Zephyrians had provided, something that would allegedly adapt to changing environments, he thought about how much had changed. A month ago, he'd been nobody special. Now he was about to risk his life in ancient alien trials to prevent a war and protect the woman he was starting to fall for. "Commander," Chen's voice came through the comm. "Transport's ready, the whole world is watching." "No pressure," Jake muttered, echoing his words from days before. But this time, he said it with a smile. He met Thera at the shuttle. She was wearing matching adaptive armor, looking every inch the warrior princess. "Ready, partner?" "Ready," he confirmed. And for the first time since this whole insane adventure began, he truly meant it. The Nexus Point existed in a pocket of space where multiple realities intersected, or so the Zephyrian scientists tried to explain to Jake. To him, it looked like someone had taken a piece of space and twisted it into an impossible knot. Colors that shouldn't exist bled through geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. The massive station at the center of the anomaly was ancient beyond comprehension, its architecture following no known design principles. It seemed to shift and change as Jake watched, as if it couldn't decide which dimension it wanted to exist in. "The ancients built this?" Jake asked as their shuttle approached. "They found it," Khosrin corrected from his seat behind them, "and they modified it for their purposes. The trials take place within its ever-shifting chambers." Through the viewports, Jake could see other ships arriving, Zephyrian vessels, Earth's small diplomatic fleet, and the ominous crystalline shapes of the Korvax armada. The galaxy was watching. "Remember," Thera said quietly, "in the neural interface, don't fight the alien thoughts. Flow with them. Adapt without losing yourself." "Easy for you to say," Jake replied, but he squeezed her hand gratefully. They docked at a platform that seemed to be made of solid light. Waiting for them was an assembly of beings from various species. Witnesses, Khosrin explained, drawn from neutral parties to ensure the trials were conducted fairly. Hierarchy Prime Zalos was there in person, its crystalline form towering over everyone else. "The stolen one arrives," it said, its voice echoing strangely in the impossible space. "Are you prepared to face judgment?" "I'm prepared to prove that I'm nobody's property," Jake replied firmly. "We shall see." Zalos gestured to a doorway that definitely hadn't been there a moment before. "The trial of mind awaits." Jake turned to Thera, who gave him a nod of encouragement. Then, taking a deep breath, he stepped through the doorway. The chamber beyond defied description. The walls seemed to be made of living thought, pulsing with patterns that represented concepts rather than images. In the center sat a chair that looked uncomfortably like a dental chair crossed with an octopus. "Sit," a voice said, not heard, but felt directly in his mind. "The trial begins when you join with the interface." Jake sat. Immediately, tendrils of light emerged from the chair, wrapping around his head. He had a moment to think this was a terrible idea, and then he was everywhere and nowhere. 1,000 alien perspectives flooded his consciousness. He was a Zephyrian scout mapping star systems, feeling colors as emotions and tasting gravitational fields. He was a crystalline Korvax, thinking in harmonics and experiencing time as a solid structure. He was something with no physical form at all, existing as pure mathematics in digital space. The human instinct was to reject these perspectives, to cling to his own identity. But Thera's words echoed in his memory. "Adapt without losing yourself." Instead of fighting, Jake let the perspectives flow through him. He was still Jake Harrison from Ohio, but he was also more. He found the common threads: curiosity, the desire to explore, the need to connect with others. These were universal, regardless of species or form. The flood became a river, then a stream, then individual drops he could examine and understand. A Zephyrian synesthetic experience of reality wasn't so different from how he visualized navigation equations. A Korvax's crystalline thought patterns resembled the way he organized combat tactics. "Interesting," the voice said. "You don't just endure. You integrate." "Very well," The second phase begins. Now the perspectives came with problems to solve. A plague threatening a hive mind. How do you cure individuals who are also the whole? A species that existed backwards in time. How do you communicate when your future is their past? A civilization facing heat death. How do you find hope when entropy itself is your enemy? Jake found himself not just understanding these problems, but finding solutions. The hive mind could partition infected segments while maintaining connection through quantum entanglement. The time-reversed species could communicate through palindromic concepts that read the same forwards and backwards. The dying civilization could seed new universes, becoming progenitors of infinite futures. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, or perhaps years. Time had no meaning in the neural interface. Jake solved problems, bridged perspectives, and found connections between modes of thought that seemed irreconcilable. Finally, the tendrils withdrew. Jake gasped, his own singular perspective feeling strangely limited after the expansion he'd experienced. "Remarkable," Zalos said, and for the first time, there was something other than contempt in its voice. "No non-Korvax has ever scored so highly on the Cognitive Adaptation Index, but one trial does not make you worthy." Jake stood on shaky legs. Thera was there immediately, supporting him. "I felt it," she whispered. "Through the bond. You were magnificent." "I was everyone," Jake said, still dazed. "I understood so much." "The knowledge will fade," Khosrin warned. "The mind cannot hold such expansion permanently, but the ability remains. You've proven you can think beyond your species. Now you must prove you can survive beyond your limits." The trial of body took place in a chamber that was somehow both tiny and infinite. As soon as Jake entered, he understood the challenge. The room shifted constantly. One moment he was in Earth gravity, the next he was crushed under weight that would flatten a normal human. The atmosphere cycled from oxygen to methane to something that burned his lungs even through the adaptive armor. His opponent materialized from the chaos, a shapeshifter that seemed to be made of the room itself, adapting perfectly to each environmental change. When gravity increased, it became denser. When the atmosphere turned toxic, it breathed freely. When time dilated, stretching seconds into minutes, it moved like lightning while Jake felt frozen in amber. Fighting it directly was impossible. Jake had to think differently. The trial wasn't about defeating the opponent, it was about surviving the chaos. Instead of fighting against the changes, he began to anticipate them. The room might be random, but it followed patterns. Gravity shifted in waves, atmosphere changed in cycles. Time dilation had a rhythm. Jake stopped trying to fight the shapeshifter and started dancing with the environment itself. When gravity crushed down, he used it, letting his increased weight add power to his strikes. When the atmosphere became toxic, he used his armor's reserves strategically, striking during the brief transitions between atmospheric states. The shapeshifter, for all its adaptability, was reactive. Jake became proactive. He started triggering environmental changes himself, recognizing that his movements affected the chamber's responses. A strike here caused a gravity flux there. A dodge in this direction triggered an atmospheric shift. "You're not fighting me," the shapeshifter said in a voice like grinding stone. "Why?" "Because you're not my enemy," Jake replied, dodging a blow that would have shattered concrete. "You're just another part of the test. The real opponent is my own limitations." The shapeshifter paused, its form rippling. "No one has ever understood that before." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises." The battle continued, but something had changed. The shapeshifter was still trying to defeat him, but it was also teaching him. Each attack showed him new ways to move in altered physics. Each environmental shift revealed new strategies for adaptation. Jake lost track of how long they fought. His body screamed with exhaustion, but he pushed through. This was what humanity did: adapt, survive, overcome, not through superior strength or technology, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Finally, the chamber stabilized. The shapeshifter stepped back, its form solidifying into something almost human-like. "Enough," it said. "You have proven you can survive chaos. But survival of the body means nothing without strength of spirit. Your final trial awaits." Jake nearly collapsed as he exited the chamber. This time, both Thera and Khosrin were there to support him. He was vaguely aware of excited chatter from the witnesses, of Zalos's crystalline form humming with what might have been agitation. "2 trials completed," Lirelei announced formally. "The stolen one has proven his mind and body worthy. The trial of spirit remains." "What happens in the 3rd trial?" Jake asked Khosrin. The elder's skin patterns shifted uncertainly. "I don't know. It's different for everyone. It shows you truth about yourself, about your choices, about what you truly are. Many who pass the first 2 trials fail the 3rd because they cannot accept what they see." Jake was given an hour to rest and recover. He spent it with Thera, not talking, just sitting together and drawing strength from their connection. He could feel her pride, her worry, her growing affection, emotions that mirrored his own. "Whatever happens," she said finally, "I want you to know." "After," Jake interrupted gently. "You promised. Give me a reason to come back." She smiled, her colors shifting to that sunset pattern he loved. "Always so stubborn. It's a human thing." Too soon, it was time for the final trial. This chamber was different from the others. Simple, white, empty except for a single mirror in the center. Jake approached it cautiously. His reflection stared back, normal at first, then beginning to shift. He saw himself as others saw him, his parents proud but worried about their son who'd chosen the stars over safety. His crew, who respected him, but wondered if he truly understood the weight of command. Thera, who saw strength he didn't know he possessed and feared he would realize he didn't need her. Then deeper truths. He saw his fear of commitment rooted in a childhood of watching his parents' marriage slowly dissolve. He saw his imposter syndrome, the constant feeling that he was playing a role he wasn't qualified for. He saw his loneliness, hidden behind jokes and military protocol. "This is who you are," a voice said, his own voice from the mirror. "Broken, afraid, unworthy of the gifts you've been given." "Maybe," Jake admitted, "but that's not all I am." The mirror shifted, showing him other truths. His determination to protect others, even at his own cost. His ability to find humor in the darkest situations, keeping his crew's spirits up during dangerous missions, his capacity for growth, for change, for becoming more than what he was. "You carry the Andreas line," the mirror Jake said, "but you're not defined by it. You're not special because of ancient genetics. You're special because you choose to be better every day, because you build bridges between people, between species, between possibilities." "Is that enough?" Jake asked. "Am I enough?" "That's the wrong question," his reflection said. "The question is, are you willing to become what the universe needs you to be?" Jake thought about Earth, taking its first steps into a larger cosmos, about the Zephyrians, seeking their lost family among the stars, about Thera, who'd taken a chance on a clumsy human who'd accidentally proposed, about all the species he'd touched minds with in the first trial, each struggling with their own challenges. "Yes," he said simply. "I'm willing." The mirror shattered, but instead of sharp fragments, it dissolved into light that flowed into Jake. He felt something fundamental shift inside him, not changing who he was, but awakening what had always been there. When he emerged from the chamber, the assembled witnesses fell silent. Jake knew something had changed in how he appeared to them, though he couldn't say what. Zalos approached, its crystalline form resonating with complex harmonics. The trials are complete. You have proven yourself in mind, body, and spirit. The Korvax hegemony. It paused, as if the words were physically painful. Acknowledges your sovereignty. The Andreas line is free of our claim, now and forever. The formal words were spoken, but Jake barely heard them. His attention was on Thera, who was looking at him with an expression of wonder and something deeper. Later, after the ceremonies and proclamations, after the Korvax had withdrawn their fleet and the immediate crisis had passed, Jake and Thera found themselves back on the observation deck of the Zephyrian ship. "So," Jake said, "I believe we had a conversation to finish." "We did," Thera agreed. "Though I think the trials might have said it better than words could." "Maybe. But I'm human. We like our words." He took her hands in his. "Thera, when this started, I thought my life was over. Trapped in an alien engagement, bound by laws I didn't understand. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being a trap and started being possibility." "When?" she asked softly. "I don't know. Maybe when you brought me kaffa that first morning. Maybe when you stood by me against your own people's traditions. Maybe when I felt your faith in me during the trials. All I know is that I can't imagine facing the future without you." Her skin shifted through a spectrum of colors he was still learning to read. "The bond brought us together. But it's not why I want to stay with you. You see me, Jake. Not the scout captain, not the reluctant princess. Just me. And you let me see you in return." "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "I mean, beyond the whole reshaping galactic politics thing." "Now?" Thera smiled. "Now we have time. Time to know each other without crisis looming. Time to figure out what a human Zephyrian partnership really looks like. Time to disappoint the media by being surprisingly normal." "Normal?" Jake laughed. "I accidentally proposed to an alien princess, discovered I'm part ancient alien, fought in interdimensional trials, and started a new era of galactic relations. I think normal might be beyond us." "Then we'll make our own version of normal," Thera said. She leaned in closer. "But first, I believe humans have a tradition when partnerships are formalized." Jake's heart raced. "We do. But are you sure? I mean, biologically..." "The compatibility tests came back while you were in trials," she interrupted, her colors shifting to deep purple. "We're remarkably compatible, in all ways." "Oh." Jake swallowed hard. "Well then." Their first kiss was awkward, noses bumping, uncertain of pressure, a nervous laugh from Thera when Jake's beard tickled her. But then they found their rhythm, and it was like the trials all over again. Two different perspectives finding harmony. When they finally pulled apart, the observation deck's viewport showed Earth hanging in space, but now it didn't look alone. Zephyrian ships hung in friendly formation with Earth vessels. Already, Jake knew, scientists from both species were working together. The Korvax were gone, but other species were sending diplomatic inquiries, curious about the humans who'd passed the ancient trials. "You know," Jake said, "when I woke up that morning for the diplomatic reception, I had no idea my life was about to change. For the better, I hope." "Without question." He pulled her close. "Though I do have one complaint." "What's that?" "I never actually got to propose properly. The whole thing was an accident." Thera laughed, the sound filling the observation deck. "Are you saying you want a do-over?" "Maybe someday," Jake said. "When we're ready. When it's our choice, not ancient protocols making it for us." "I'll hold you to that, Commander Harrison." "I'm counting on it, Scout Captain." They stood together watching Earth turn. Two unlikely partners who'd found each other through cosmic accident and chosen to stay together through love. It wasn't the future either of them had planned, but it was the one they wanted. 6 months later, at a ceremony attended by representatives from 12 different species, Jake properly proposed to Thera. He did it in both English and Zephyrian, with rings made from metal mined on both their worlds. When she said yes, the assembled crowd erupted in celebration, except for the Korvax observer, who simply nodded and made notes about proper protocol being followed. Their wedding became the social event of the century, broadcast across known space. But for Jake and Thera, the real moment had been that quiet conversation on the observation deck, when they'd chosen each other without ancient rites or galactic politics, just two people building a bridge between worlds, one kiss at a time. The media loved to call it a fairy tale, the accidental prince who'd saved the galaxy with love. Jake and Thera knew better. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was messier, complicated, sometimes difficult, and absolutely real. And that made it so much better than any story. Years later, when their daughter asked how they'd met, Jake would start with, "Well, I accidentally proposed to your mother." And Thera would add, "But the second time he did it on purpose." Their daughter, who had her mother's color-shifting skin and her father's stubborn smile, would roll her eyes at the familiar story. But she'd listen anyway, because it was a good story, a human story, a Zephyrian story. A love story that spanned the stars,